That's more like it. All right. Greg Werner became the head strength and conditioning coach at James Madison University in 1995 after working as an assistant in the program the previous 3 years. In addition to coaching at JMU, Werner has been the faculty instructor for the Department of Kinesiology, see, I can say that, Concepts of Strength and Conditioning course for the past 12 years. Over the past 20 years at JMU, Werner has helped grow the strength program from one assistant coach with 2 weight rooms to the current program, which includes himself as head strength and conditioning coach, a director of football strength and conditioning, 4 assistant strength coaches, and several interns with 5 weight rooms and 3 multi-purpose cardio fitness rooms totaling over 20,000 square feet. Before JMU, Werner was an assistant and taught classes for 1 year at the University of the Pacific. Werner received his MS in exercise science from James Madison and his BS in human performance from Austin Peay State University. Outside the collegiate ranks, Coach Werner has worked with several NFL, Major League Baseball, pro basketball, Major League Soccer, and Olympic athletes. In 1999, Werner was selected as the NSCA Colonial Athletic Association Professional of the Year. Coach Werner has served as the strength and conditioning specialist for the U.S. Olympic field hockey team and has the NSCA's Virginia State Director. He's also been an active speaker at the NSCA Sports Specific Training Conference, CSCS Symposium, and several other coaching clinics and camps. In 2005, Coach Werner received the NSCA's highest distinction of Coach Practitioner. In 2006, Werner received the Collegiate Strength and Conditioning Coaches Association highest distinction of Master Strength and Conditioning Coach. In 2011, Werner was voted as a member of the CSCCA's Board of Directors. In addition to his coaching and teaching, Werner has published over 25 strength and conditioning articles in various coaching journals and magazines and is the webmaster for the JMU Strength and Conditioning website. Werner is Strength and Conditioning Coach certified through the CSCCA, is an NSCA certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist, an ACSM certified Health Fitness Instructor, as well as an ISMA certified Sports Nutrition Consultant. On top of his dedicated leadership at JMU, Coach Werner owns and operates Athlete Strength and Conditioning Academy, where he and his staff coach athletes ranging from 7th graders to professional athletes. And after getting to know Greg a lot better after working with him this past year, there's nobody else in this profession that's more dedicated to improving the student athletes in this profession. I present to you Coach Greg Werner.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. I'll get that bonus to you next week. Well, first of all, it's an honor to be up here speaking in front of you. I speak at high school coaches conferences and things like that, but I've never had a chance to speak at the CSCCA and stand in front of a group of peers. Kind of makes you nervous. Standing in front of a bunch of strength coaches talking about strength and conditioning. I'm used to coaches of other sports who are, everything's new to them. But it's a great honor. I want to thank Chuck and Becky for their hard work and diligent effort in putting this whole conference together. It seems to be a great conference. I've enjoyed it a lot and I hope everybody else has. I want to thank Coach Ethan Reeve. Ethan called me a while back and asked me if I was willing to speak. And, of course, I said yes. I'm not going to pass up that opportunity to do anything for this association. And he says, well, I want you to talk about Olympic sports. That was it. That's all he gave me, You got the Olympic sport talk. And so that was in the middle of a busy schedule, as you know we all have. And it kind of slipped up on me, and I'm thinking, what am I going to talk about? Olympic sports, I work with Olympic sports. I work with basketball, soccer, all those sports. What would something I could talk about that would kind of help all coaches with Olympic sports? I decided this is a good topic. There's some good stuff out on it now, and it's something for me that I started investigating back in '95. My first assistant was a guy named Fred Hatfield. It was Dr. Hatfield's son. If any of you know who Dr. Hatfield is, he's called Dr. Squat. My first assistant was son of Squat, Freddie Hatfield. And Freddie, growing up, the son of Dr. Hatfield, that's all he thought about was strength and conditioning. Different ways. He was that kid that grew up, hey son, let's let's do some plyos, let's do this, let's do that. His dad pushed him into that stuff, and he really enjoyed it. So Freddie and I investigated, some of Mel Siff's work, the super training and those types of things, and where auto-regulatory was kind of mentioned, and it was out there. And then I had an assistant after that, a guy named Zach Weatherford. And Zach trains the Navy SEALs now in Coronado. Zach's had a great career working with the Olympic Training Center and other places. But Zach and I were thinking, the general standard periodization model, 3 sets, 4 sets, whatever it is that we were given to the football team, the baseball team, the basketball team, how is that, because Zach was a gifted athlete, had a great just genetic structure. When we would work out together, he would recover faster than me. He was able to do more than me. He's genetically just a stronger person than me. So if we both did the same workout, we always thought, well, I'm either going to be overtrained or you're going to be undertrained. So how do we regulate it? How do we do, and it's got to be the case for our athletes too. We had those kids that we could crush them one day in a hard workout, and they'd come back the next day with no soreness, and then the other 5 guys couldn't walk for 2 days. So do we diminish the work for the really elite guy to keep him down at the level so that we can train everybody at the same level? Or do we create something or develop a program that allows for individual differences, individual recoverability, individual, sustainability and adaptation? And that's kind of where Zach and I started playing with it, and came up with different, schemes. And we used it back then. And then I kind of strayed away from it and got more back into traditional, and then got kind of into conjugate and, just some of the new stuff. But then when Coach Mann and Coach Ivy came out with their work, which very good work. Have any of you, or raise your hand if you've read their study on auto-regulatory training. Okay, you all should raise your hand. I'm telling you, if you haven't, go find it and read it. It's been published. At Missouri, they used it. They proved, and I'm going to show you the results, that it is effective, that it is more effective than linear periodization. And so I had been using it with basketball players for several years because I found it was a very good way to motivate them, okay, to do things the way we do it. We've got all of our workouts. We don't have any paper workouts anymore. Everything's up on screens. And we got the big flat screens up in the weight room. And so for them to see their numbers up there and for them to see their teammates' numbers and to know, here's what I did last time, and we give them a goal to max it, hit it as hard as you can, it was motivating. It was motivating for them. Okay? So that's kind of how I got around to this, how it kind of evolved for me. Real quick before I go into this, I want to throw out a quick challenge to the young strength coaches. Raise your hand if you're an assistant, a graduate assistant, a student assistant, strength and conditioning coach. I figured there'd be a lot of them in here. Okay? I want to challenge you guys and girls to go back, if you haven't already done this, because I started thinking about my career. When I was in your shoes as an assistant, as a graduate assistant, I luckily had a very good mentor, several of them coming up. My first boss was Dan Austin. I don't know if you know Dan, but Dan's a tremendous weightlifter, power lifter. Dan taught me about lifting weights. The next guy I had was a guy named Steve Plisk. Steve's no longer in the field, but if you've read anything back, 10 years ago, Steve was publishing a lot. Steve thought a little bit differently, okay? He had a very, encyclopedic knowledge of strength and conditioning, but he thought more on a businessman's terms of being a professional. Okay? So Steve taught me a lot of that kind of stuff. And what I want to challenge you to do, what you've already heard here this week, hopefully you were at that health and safety talk, so I want to challenge you to go back and be proactive. And don't wait on the head guy. Okay? Don't wait on your head strength and conditioning coach to do this. You do it. You do it for no other reason, just to get used to doing it. Okay? Produce an emergency action plan. Okay? If you haven't done it, do it. Go through those steps. Produce an emergency action plan for the weight room, for the training field, wherever you train, for the basketball arena, or if you train the kids down on that court, wherever it is, go through those steps. Even though there may already be one in place, it's real easy to look at it and say, okay, it's already been done. But someday, I hope you all plan on being a head strength and conditioning coach. I hope that's why you're in this. And if you stick with it, you will be. So go through those steps and learning how to do that and having that mindset of things can go wrong. Okay? And I need to know that emergency action plan. I need to produce one and I need to execute it. Okay? That's the first thing. The next thing is go through the process of producing a policy and procedures handbook. Okay? How many of you have a policy and procedures handbook where you work? Your boss has given you one and explained the policy and procedures. Okay? That's not enough hands. To be a pro, if you go to any business, they have a policy and procedures handbook. Okay? So you need to learn how to produce one. If you haven't done it, if you need help doing it, send me an email. Okay? We've got one. I produced it back when I was in grad school. I went through those steps, and we've just kind of evolved it over the years. Go through those steps. Okay? Start thinking like you're the head strength and conditioning coach already. If you're a graduate assistant, start working with the interns as those are your assistants. Okay? Start working with them and teaching them things. If you're the assistant, work with the GAs, work with the interns. Start working your way into the mindset of you're going to be a head strength and conditioning coach someday. The last thing, just challenge you to be a pro and do those things. Be professional. Start getting those things in your library of resources. You've got a emergency action plan. You've got a policy and procedures manual. Start thinking about budgets. Okay, those are things that a lot of guys and girls don't know, and then boom, they get the job. And what do I do about a budget? Never written a budget. Never. The AD asks, what I need. Well, I'm just thinking about the first fastest thing. I'm not really thinking in depth what I really need, what this thing needs to be a program, not just a weight room. You want to think of developing a program that will last, that will grow, that will flourish, not just a weight room. Okay, a program. Okay. So I want to challenge you young coaches to do that before I got into this talk. Okay. All right, so auto-regulatory training. Now I am by no means an expert on this. Okay. I'm just going to tell you what I've learned about it and kind of how I've learned about it through a book that I read and how I've used it. Okay, and then some bits and pieces of it. I want to talk quickly about biomotor ability needs. I think that's a starting place for any strength and conditioning program. I don't care what kind of program it is. You need to start with what are the needs of the athlete. Not just, we all need to lift weights. Why do we need to lift weights? Why do we need to run? Why do we need to jump? Why do we need to do the things we do? And how are they different with each sport, with each athlete? Okay? We'll talk a little bit about individual differences. That's the key to auto-regulatory, training, and that's why we used it, is because there are individual differences. A little bit about the nervous system, what the basics are. I'll show you some sample exercises that we use. The research, the little bit of research that's out there, talk about that, and then just quickly show you a sample workout and kind of how we use it. Okay, the biomotor ability needs: strength, endurance, speed, coordination, flexibility. Combinations of those: muscular endurance, speed endurance, power, quickness, agility, balance, and mobility. Okay, that's a scale. Low, medium, high. Where does your athlete fit on that scale? That's where you start to know, hey, if he fits in down here with strength, I better be doing some squats, some deadlifts, some heavy lifting. Okay? He has a high need, or she has a high need for maximum strength. Now look at these two. One's a football offensive lineman, one's a basketball guard. Okay? Which do you think is which? Which red dot, which is the yellow dot? Okay? It's pretty obvious, I would think. But that's going to tell me, when I look at that, the weightlifting portions needs to be different. The plyometric, this conditioning portion, that's kind of my blueprint of saying, I see this, I see that. This is why I'm going to lift heavy. This is why I'm going to do explosive work. This is why I'm going to do some anaerobic endurance work with that athlete more than the other. Okay, kind of gives you a template to say, you know what, we can't just give everybody the same workout. It's got to be set up for that sport, for that athlete. Okay? Strength and adaptations are individual. Okay? Everyone's not a big dog. They're all different. They're all different. Okay. Everyone has individual responses to stressors. That's kind of going back to what I was talking about with Zach and I. Zach, he was just a genetically gifted dude. I mean, he's just got the gift. He could recover fast. He built muscle fast. He was a true mesomorph. Okay, where I was kind of that hybrid. So you've got to look at your athletes that way, on your team. Some recover a little faster than others. Some can be pushed a little sooner than others. Some can be pushed harder than others. Eventually, though, they're all going to have the right program, and you're going to maximize their genetic potential without hurting them. Okay? And that's what we're after. Okay? Even those little dogs can lift the big weights if you do it right. Okay, talk about the nervous system. The nervous system controls every cell, tissue, and organ in the body. It is the controlling factor. Okay? And if we wear it out, if we stress it out, okay, it's not as obvious sometimes as muscle soreness is. When we stress the muscles, they tell us they're sore, they're hurting. A lot of times the nervous system, we don't realize it. We've got to be in tune to what's happening and the stressors we're putting on the athlete to kind of know how the nervous system operates and to see signs of stress in the nervous system. Okay? It's not as obvious sometimes. Movements can be classified into several modes, but the nervous system is the common thread. Okay? And then neurodynamics is kind of a term that Buckenholtz uses in the book I'm going to talk about that deals with his version of autoregulatory training. Okay? Study your structure, study anatomy, study the body. You're not just training a basketball player, you're not just training a soccer player, you're training a human body. Okay? You're training a human body that you want to see. You want to produce certain results that will make that human body a better soccer player, a better basketball player, better whatever you're training them for. Okay? But look at the structures and study them. Study how that nervous system operates. Study that neuromuscular, skeletal neuromuscular system, how everything works to pull on those bones and the movements that are, needed within that sport to know how to set up your program. When you look at this right here, and you think, what exercises are really functional, if you want to talk about functional training. Look how everything works together. There's nothing on there that's really isolated. The human body is made to do large movements. Squatting, jumping, running. It's made to do those types of things. That's how an athlete works. And that's how you need to design your program to do that. This is the book I was telling you about. The best sports training book ever. I don't know that title is appropriate. You might be a little proud of his title, but I'll tell you, if you want to read a book that you'll have to read like 4 times to really understand it, that's the one. I had to read that book like at least 4 times. How many of you have read it? A few of you? I see you shaking your head when I say I had to read it 4 times. This guy speaks in a different language. His terms are a little different. But once you read it for that 4th time and you kind of understand where he's going with it, you kind of see that there's some application for us in there. Okay? They think he goes by D.B. Hammer now. You can find stuff on the internet that he's written. But he talks about neurodynamics and autoregulatory training in depth in this book. Okay? And I'd read about, like I said, some of the autoregulatory stuff in Mel Siff's work. I talked to Dr. Hatfield about it back years ago. We had kind of just talked, brainstormed about it. But this was the first book I read that really, this guy really believed in it and really talked about it the most. Okay. Again, I'll caution you, it's not an easy read, but it's a good book I think you should read. Okay, what are the components? Program ingredients for the neurodynamics that he talks about. Really, this nothing different. He just uses different terms for them. Okay, neuroduration, neuromagnitude, neurorate. And if we think about those things in conjugate terms, things that we call conjugate now, max effort, dynamic effort, repetitive effort. It's just play on terms a lot of times. Neuroduration, max effort work, heavy lifting. Okay, I just call it heavy work. It's like a power lifter. Bodybuilding, some of that neuroduration, putting the muscle under stress for longer periods of time, making it strain. Okay? Neuromagnitude, speed of movement, high neural activity, using that nervous system to move something fast. Okay? Neural rate, working with mainly just your body weight and moving your feet, moving something really fast with a low resistance. Okay? Same thing with the plyos. Okay? And then they combine for different things, you know. Magnitude and rate go together when you're sprinting because you're applying maximum force to the ground, but you're moving your legs, you're cycling them really fast. So the rate is the cycle, the magnitude is the application of force to the ground. Okay? But it takes a combination of these things I've learned, and I'm sure all of you know that if all we did was this, that's what we'd get. We'd get somebody that was really strong, okay, but they wouldn't complement their strength with these other qualities. Okay? The more we train in one particular fashion, it's the SAID principle, okay? Specific adaptation to opposed demands. If all we do is powerlifting, we develop strength, but the more we develop that strength, just focusing on that strength, we take away from other qualities. Okay? I have no doubt that the guys at Westside Barbell are strong. Now, would I want them on my basketball team? No. Would I want them out there on the soccer field? No. Would I want them on the football team? Maybe at certain positions, but they're tight. They're not as flexible. They're not as, it's athletic. Okay? Those are power lifters. But we have learned things from that type of training that is very beneficial, so we need to use it. Same thing with bodybuilding. I don't want my women's basketball team looking like that girl, but I have thin kids that I need to develop muscle mass in, so we've learned a lot from bodybuilding. We've learned a lot from Olympic weightlifting. We've learned a lot from all of these, and we've learned that we need to combine them to have our ideal program. This is one of the most, crucial parts of training an athlete, especially an Olympic sport athlete like we're talking about. Olympic sport athletes a lot of times don't have a need for huge muscle mass. They're all about movement and execution. Your soccer player is not going to have a great benefit by putting on 20 pounds unless he's just a really thin kid. But if I can make him utilize a stretch shortening cycle with greater efficiency and execute power with quicker execution, that's going to make him a better soccer player. Okay. I'm sure you've all done the sample with the finger, but I want to take you through these four just to reiterate it and kind of get it in your mind. Okay. Take your right hand and put it on your chest. Raise your index finger and lower it. Now do it as hard and fast as you can 5 times. Okay? That's the first one. That's all voluntary. That's all mental. You telling your finger, raise, lower, raise, lower. There's no reflex involved. Now take that other hand, grab it, pull it back, and let it go. Okay? Now we're activating or utilizing that stretch reflex. We're stretching it. You didn't have to think about lowering it. It went down. Okay? That was the reflex of that stretch executing it. Now what I want you to do is combine those two. Pull it back and really think about pulling it hard when you let it go. You hear that? You hear the sound going up? That's greater power output. Okay? So when you're executing different weightlifting exercises, plyometric exercises, sprinting, if we can think of not just going through the motions, but voluntarily producing force with the use of the reflex, now you got greater force. Now the last one, kind of resist pulling it back so you build up some eccentric tension in those fibers, and then think of pulling it down even harder as you resist. You hear it? You can hear greater sound, more force. Because now we're building up negative tension within the fiber. We're causing more energy to be stored in the fiber. Now we're executing it with voluntary contraction and reflex. So the way I think about that is when we're doing our eccentrics, we don't just drop the bar. We pull it down with tension in our fibers. When we go over a hurdle in a plyometric, we don't just land. When we're in the air, we're anticipating the landing and we tense the muscles so that as we land, we've already got some tension built in there, some eccentric tension built so that when we hit, we're like a great spring and boom, we've got that and our voluntary and our reflex, and now we get off the ground a lot faster. Okay? That's one of the rationales behind the first part that we'll talk about here of neurodynamics. Okay? There are 3 general classifications of work or modalities contrived from the electrical influence and internal or external means have on recruiting motor units. Okay, that's talking about the nervous system, how the nervous system activates and it gets to those motor units to activate the muscle contractions. Okay, neuroduration, length of neural output or strength. This is the strength training, the heavy strength training. Okay, DB's term is neural duration. Again, it's just a different term. It's max effort work. It's heavy work. Okay, very needed. Now, this is, and I'm not going to show you any videos or anything because you're all, well adept on learning, knowing how to do strength exercises. You heard the old no pain, no gain. The thing I try to teach is no strain, no gain. Okay, when you're doing these exercises, shouldn't be painful, but you got to be straining. You got to be pushing hard to make progress doing this. Okay, if it's easy, it's not heavy enough. Okay, it should be hard. You should be straining for that rep. You should be reaching for that rep. Okay, to make progress in this. This lends itself the best to autoregulatory training, heavy lifting, squatting, benching, deadlifting, those type of movements. Okay, they're easier to track, they're easier to record, they're easier to to keep up with. It doesn't take a Tendo unit, it doesn't take any great piece of equipment besides a barbell, dumbbell, whatever you're using. And one thing, real quick, anything you can use autoregulatory for anything if you can measure it. You can use it for height, jumping on boxes, anything that you can measure height, distance, time, speed, weight on the bar, repetitions, anything can be used in the autoregulatory model, okay? So that we can track it to see, did you make progress from the last workout? If not, why not? You didn't recover. He did, you didn't. Your recovery's slower. Why? Let's go a little deeper. What did you eat? How did you sleep? How do you feel? Those type of things. Okay? But this is one of the first components. Is neuroduration, training heavy. Okay, why do we train heavy? What's the rationale behind it? The size principle. And that's how we get to those high threshold motor units. Okay? If all we did was lift the lighter weights, we'd be light to moderate right in here. Percentage of fibers used, we're not getting to them. Okay, we're down in the slow twitch. And I'm talking about lifting lighter weights at a moderate speed, not really accelerating it, but just lifting them. Okay, so if we're talking about squatting, lighter weights, he's got 135 on the bar. All he's getting are those type 1 fibers. Okay, it's not until you get more weight on the bar that you get all of those fibers and you get into that high threshold motor unit, fast twitch, activation. Okay, that's the reason why everybody needs to lift heavy weights. Females, males, it doesn't matter. They need to lift some heavy weights, and heavy is relative. Okay, it's heavy for them. At about 85% or greater of what they can handle, their max. Okay, the next is neural rate or speed. This is movements associated with the quickest neural rate in transmission. Okay, so it's footwork drills, it's cycling, it's movement with a very lightweight to no weight, and executing, the neuromuscular system to operate at a high rate, speed of movement. Okay, I'll show you some drills that we use, that I've used, that do that, okay? Just things like this. Just popping, working the feet, quick, okay? Simple things. Any of these can be measured if you really want to use the autoregulatory system for them, so that you can see if you're making progress. Say, okay, we're going to go for 10 seconds. How many foot contacts can you get in 10 seconds? Next week, I want to see you get more foot contacts in 10 seconds. Or we can say, I want to see you get 20 contacts. How soon or how long does it take you to get 20 contacts? Next week, we want to see you get more contacts, or a faster time on those contacts. This is utilizing the fast eccentric contraction. Boom, taking a load on fast and working the eccentric. You got to work both. Speed drills. Okay, Got to run like that cheetah. Execution of fast cycles, fast movements, fast legs, fast arms. Okay? That's Coach Bennett right there. Speed is, it's where it's at for that. So those are two examples, okay, of looking at rate. Okay? Can be handwork drills, heavy bag work, hand movement drills. If you're in a sport where hand movements are key, getting in there. I remember years ago with the football guys, I used to bring them in and we used to do basically, martial arts type work with the hands, being quick, getting people off of it. If you've got a sport where that's crucial, you need to work on that movement, okay? That movement of speed with the hands, speed not just of the legs, the whole body, okay? Okay, magnitude, the movement that is associated with the greatest electrical activity. This is the one that really works that nervous system the most, okay? Motor unit recruitment. Speed presses, bench presses, throws and catches, Olympic lifts. The Olympic lifts are great. I'll tell you, the Olympic lifts, for me, those are the hardest ones to use the auto-regulatory system with. I don't have great Olympic lifters. My basketball players are not the best Olympic lifters in the world, so I don't want to put them under the stress of saying, how fast can you get 5 reps? Or, I don't have Tendo units. If you have Tendo units, I'd say, you can use it really easily. You're measuring that power output and seeing how long you can keep it at a certain level. When you fatigue, that's when you diminish the set. But if you don't have that, the bench pressing movements, the depth jumps, those type of things, they're easy to do with the basketball, soccer, Olympic sport athlete. The Olympic lifts, I wouldn't, if you don't have those devices, I wouldn't do them. Okay, because you start encouraging people to do exercises maybe they're not the greatest at and get sloppy with them. Okay. Reactive activities fit well into this modality. Okay, the plyometrics, the jumps, those type of things. Here's kind of the rationale behind this. Kind of the other one also, the rate. This is a study that I looked at years ago. Lifter with a 340-pound max, looking at 4 different types of training. Super slow training, traditional weightlifting, traditional training, like you see most people in any gym doing. They're bench pressing. They're not really doing anything fast. They're just down and up with it. Okay. Compensatory acceleration training. That's when we say, okay, come down under control, but accelerate that bar to the very top. Okay. So this is talking about a bench press. Because with most people, if you tell them to bench press fast, they bench press off their chest fast, but as they get to the top, they slow down. And for sports, a lot of what you get out of, power with the upper body happens here. You don't just push somebody and then kind of slow down. It's at the very end, okay? Accelerating something to the very end. Throwing something as hard as you can through the finish. That's called compensatory acceleration. That was a term that Dr. Hatfield came up with years ago to talk about that type of training. Accelerate it to the very end. Hard as you can. Jam it up there as hard as you can, okay? And then the last one, dynamic accentuated resistance training, that's using the bands, okay? Banded resistance. If we look at that, this is garbage. Super slow training. Never do that with an athlete. Maybe a kid coming back from an injury, the trainers would do that with them as a rehab modality to get them back in. But as a strength and conditioning coach, I would never do that. Tried it years ago when it came out just to play with it. Oh, it's painful. It's ugly. Don't do it. But you look at this. This guy's got 255 pounds on the bar. He produced 255.4 foot-pounds of force, okay, to get the bar moving, okay, or actually 255 pounds of force, 59.578 foot-pounds per second. Okay. The traditional weightlifting, 308 pounds of force, 264 foot-pounds per second. Big difference between the super slow and just a regular weightlifting, okay, traditional. Now when we tell them to really accelerate it hard, to do the compensatory acceleration, look at the difference, okay? That's how much force he's putting into the bar. That's what he's getting foot-pounds per second, force output. And then when we put the bands on the bar, okay, looking at, this is a bench press, it can be any exercise though, and we tell them to lift it fast, Okay? So these guys all had 255 pounds on the bar. When we put the bands on the bar, they accommodated for the change of the resistance as you went through the range of motion. So there's 230 pounds on the bar, but because of the bands, at the midpoint it's 255. At the top it's 280 because the bands add resistance. Okay? It's accommodated resistance. Look at the output, though. Look at the difference. I don't know about you. These are the ones I want to train my athletes in right here. That could be a squat, a deadlift, a bench press, any exercise you can attach the bands to and get your athlete to do it fast. Okay? Any of those. So that's kind of the rationale behind the dynamic magnitude effort training. Speed. Submaximal load, high speed. And that's what we're after. Attaching the bands to it just makes it even better. Okay? Not that you'd want to do that every day, but from time to time, those are really good things to do. This is just talking about that compensatory acceleration. You should hit that bar so hard your back comes off the bench. You're accelerating through the end of the barbell. Okay? These are just a couple of interns having fun in the weight room. Start off with the slower eccentric, making sure they have control of it, and then, boom, accelerate down and up, getting a fast eccentric and a fast concentric, and then throw in a stopwatch and have them compete against each other, or just compete with themselves. That's when it becomes autoregulatory. So if you don't have a tendo unit for an exercise like this, you can just do it simply with a stopwatch. Okay? Last week, it took you, so many seconds to complete 3 reps with that weight. Your goal is to beat that time. Okay? If you beat the time, we raise the weight. That's how we change it from week to week. We regulate it. There's some banded stuff. Speed against the resistance and elastic resistance. Working the shoulders. Okay. This is a basketball player. That's what happens in the game. She's taking the ball up through somebody really fast. Okay. She's got to have speed with that resistance. So kind of the way this is utilized is you have your heavy days and your lighter days. And on your heavy days, with your traditional lifts, you can see how progress is being made, okay, based on reps, based on weight. And then on your lighter days, if the progress is slower, you do very light work for speed. If the progress is a little faster, you can do a moderate weight for repetitions, okay, you can do a little more work. But if you work hard one day, based on what you see from your heavy lifts, you didn't make progress, you got to allow for recovery. You either shut them down that day and shift to this, or the next day, the next workout, you down-regulate to an exercise like this that's less stressful on that muscular system to give it time to recover, so that next time when you get to that heavy day, you've made progress. And you're not just pounding the body down. You're giving it time to recover. Now, this is a good exercise. How many of you do this exercise? Okay. I learned this one years ago from some track guys, because hamstring injuries, you think about exercises like leg curls and things like that, the hamstring doesn't become injured by flexing the knee joint. It's injured when the foot is stable and the hip moves over the heel. Okay? Foot is stable and there's hip motion. And when the foot strikes too far out in front of the body, that's when we see the hamstring problems, when they're overreaching. Okay? Well, how do you kind of prepare? Because that's going to happen from time to time. A kid's going to overstride. How do you prepare for that? You can put him through an exercise like this, where his hips are traveling. His foot's out in front of his hips are traveling up over his foot. If you put that vertical, that's the position it would be in. Now, the bent knee action, you're getting a lot more glute work. Okay, and on the next one, when we straighten the knees out a little more, you get a little more stress on the hamstring, and you get to that knee joint angle that they're typically at when they make foot contact. Okay? So you're stressing the hamstrings to stretch and fire. It helps strengthen the hamstring glutes, and it helps to prevent some of those injuries because it's introducing that stretch fire to the hamstring muscle. Okay? Some other exercises you can do under that, the power, magnitude, using a machine like this. Okay? You can do it with a barbell, but the barbell is going to fly up off your back. This machine, because of the mechanics of the machine, the weight stays down and you can jump with it and move fast with it. Okay? Your traditional, Olympic lifts, your power cleans, your hang cleans, those type of movements. Very good for that magnitude section of it. Okay? Again, you can measure these to use them in autoregulatory if you have the device. If you have a Tendo or that new device that they've got, something that can measure bar speed, okay, power output. But to just stopwatch a kid on something like this, it's impossible. Okay. Here's one. That's my 17-year-old son. You talk about explosive hips, explosive core work, right here. Now he's doing it with no hands. And you fire your hips and your core to get through an exercise like that. You've got to be explosive. Okay? That's an athletic, explosive movement that if you can get your athletes doing that, they're going to become a better athlete. Okay? And it's really not that hard to teach. Okay? Depth jumps, we probably all know about depth jumps. Just drop and explode off the ground. Working on a fast eccentric to concentric stretch shortening cycle. Because of the depth, you've got a greater eccentric, you've got a greater landing force. Speed off the ground is what we're after. Executing a good landing. Here's another exercise with bands. It's a rotational, where once you get them in tune, you can get them to go faster with it and get some speed. One arm's pulling, one arm's pushing. This is a basketball player. He's hooking the guy with his elbow and driving up with the hand. Okay, and he's getting some rotation. Okay, this one you got to be careful with, but it's these guys, it was the first time I think they've ever done it. These are some interns. And it's not a dangerous exercise if it's taught right and not rushed into it. And it really works on that top end speed and explosiveness of moving that object with great speed and force. You see right now he's got a yardstick out there to give him something to hit, a target. Okay? Here's some things we do with bands. Again, working on the speed, the magnitude. This one's getting both because he's having to apply force hard to the ground, but he's cycling his legs very fast. Okay? Attach those bands on the bottom rack, put them across your shoulders. Getting a great conditioning effect also, metabolic effect from something like this. He's doing that for time. Going more to single leg skipping action. Again, the cycling part is that speed component. Force into the ground is the magnitude component, so it's a combination of having to put force down because of that resistance of the band to create more leg strength, more leg power, and then working the hip action to create more speed and efficiency in the hip action. And going into the jump squat, okay, resisted jump squat. This is, something similar to Vertimax. Doesn't have the same concept as the Vertimax. It's pulling you down a lot faster. You got to have the legs ready, but you're getting that explosive, fast eccentric on that landing. That deceleration right there, catching yourself in that shock. A lot of components to that benefit and that can be tracked. The basics of the autoregulatory, the thing that we look at is it manages intensity and or volume in order to regulate individual differences. Okay? Allows individual differences to be self-governed and applied. Self-governed, you got to be careful how you play that one out. Some kids will self-govern themselves right out of the lifting anything. Okay? If you give them too much choice, how do you feel today? If they're not really into the training part of it, I'm a little bit sore, I'm a little bit tired. You let that be your determining factor. Okay, you go down. No, you got to test them. You got to see performance. I think you got to say, okay, let's see you perform, and that'll show me. You put them in a team setting with this autoregulatory. I'll show you a workout as we show it to the athletes up on the screens. It does these things, but it also creates team peer pressure. So maybe a kid is feeling a little bit down that day. And you want to see how they perform. Well, their teammates, a lot of times, will pick them right up. You know, the person in front of them just got a personal best on that exercise. They suck it up and they say, I got to beat that. That competitive nature starts to come out, so they find a way to train a little harder. Okay? Or they don't get it, and then you know, hey, they really didn't recover. We really need to downregulate that day for them. We need to not push them as hard. Okay? So we have those daily fluctuations. This is how the autoregulatory is beneficial, is that it allows that and lets us know so that we can adjust things. Okay? Okay. If nothing else, you should pay attention to the importance of managing fatigue rather than simply creating it. That's the benefit to this. You know, a lot of what we do is we create fatigue. We create fatigue. We push kids. We push them. We push them. We don't really pay attention to the fatigue a lot of times and how they are recovering and how they are adapting. Okay, this helps us do that. Okay, and it helps us look at the supercompensation of, you know, if you train hard this day and you do the right things when you leave here, eat, sleep, rest, recover. When you come back the next time and we do that same exercise at that same intensity, you should show some sign of progress. 2 more reps, faster reps, put more weight on the bar, those type of things. I'm not going to go into great detail on this. You can read his book, but it's just talking about the fluctuation and how if you induce a 6%, he's using an example of a 6% drop-off. That's one method of autoregulatory, is using the drop-off method, where you look at, okay, we're at a certain weight for so many reps, and we lift it until you have a 6% drop-off, okay? Or we drop the weight 6% and see if you can maintain it for so many sets until you drop off. That's when we know we terminate it, okay? What he's talking about is if you work to that level, okay, that decrement or that drop-off of 6%, you go and do the right things and rest and eat and sleep and, you know, do things that your body needs to. When you come back, if you go through the proper supercompensation, okay, and I'll talk about his rule of thirds here in a minute, you should make close to that, at least that same percentage of improvement, okay? It doesn't happen every single time, but you'll see it, you know, somewhere no less than a 1.5% gain. And a lot of times in the very beginning, if you hit them at 5-6%, when they come back, if they've done the right things and you give them adequate time to come back to that exercise, you're going to see a 5 to 6% increase. You're going to see improvement, adaptation. So I talked about that. You can, you know, account for that fatigue by measuring reps, load, time, height. Pay attention to your performance. Okay, use one of those variables to check and to auto-regulate. The degree to which compensation raises above the initial level between sessions, progress is directly proportional to the degree which fatigue is administered. That's what I was talking about. You can't go too deep with the fatigue. If you do, you got to allow longer recovery. Okay, you can hit them hard, but you can't hit them hard frequently. You can hit them hard if you give them longer recoveries. What I've found is it's better to hit them hard, but not too hard, because we're usually in a 3 or 4 day cycle of training, and I want to get back to that same muscle group, that same exercise the following week. So if I give them the right dose of work, the right dose of stress, they do the right things. When they come back, they make progress. Okay. Here's the study done by Coach Mann and Ivy. Very good study. Okay. Like I said, if you haven't read it, get it and read it. They used football players at Missouri. They had the autoregulatory program, autoregulatory progressive resistance exercise. Here, linear periodization here, 12 and 11. You can see the variables of age, body mass, height. Very similar, no real difference, okay? 2 equal groups. All right. This was the protocol they used, okay, for a 6RM. They utilized a 10RM, a 6RM, and a 3RM. Those are great numbers. I like using those too. And so what they were asking their athletes to do was to lift 50% of their projected 6RM for that day for the first set for 10 reps. These are your warm-ups. Then go 75%, and then max it out right here. Okay? They, I imagine, had about 85% on the bar. Okay? Somewhere around there. Something that they knew the athlete could do. Okay? And I'll go back. The way I do it with a lot of these athletes, I've learned now that I don't even have to do 1-rep maxes on them anymore for these Olympic sport athletes. I can just start them off on day 1 and make that a testing day. Every day when you're doing this type of training is a testing day. Okay? You're testing them every time they come in the weight room. Okay? You're seeing what their maximum effort is, how many reps they can get. They're pushing to a max. Then they're trying to exceed that. So I just work them up, find out what that 6-rep max is, or that 3-rep max, or 10-rep max. I generally start at a 10-rep max the first time they're in there. And then that gives me the numbers to go for the next week, and the next week, and the next week. I don't have to do the 1-rep max and then extrapolate off of that 85% and then go from there. I just go right into this, okay, and just kind of find out where they're at. But they did a 6RM, okay, depending on how the athlete did, they auto-regulated. If the athlete got 1 or 2 or less reps, they dropped 5 to 10 pounds. If they got 3 to 4, they stayed the same or subtracted 5. If they were in that 5 to 7 range, no change. Next set, do the same weight, see how many reps you can get. Okay? If they overshot it, they got more than 6 or more than 8, 8 to 12, they go up 5 to 10 pounds, greater than 13, 10 to 15 pounds. Okay? So they were within that, probably seeing that. Some kids were stronger than they thought. First day, they went in there, they thought they would hit 6 with that weight. Maybe they hit 13. That kid, let's work you up. Some kids couldn't handle that weight. Maybe they got 3. Let's drop the weight for the next step. That's auto-regulatory. That's where we regulate it, okay? And we know. So here's that protocol again. 3RM, 10RM. That's kind of how we do it. And here's what he found, okay? The autoregulatory program, the linear periodization program, okay? They actually dropped in that. That's the bench press. That right there would tell me I need to do this stuff. I need to try it out. If you're getting that big a difference, okay? I need to try this. This guy's making a progress. Just look at that progress. Minus. Okay? Squat. I mean, if somebody threw those numbers out at you and said, hey, you want this or you want this? No brainer. I think I want my kids getting this. Okay? Coach Mann's sitting right here if you guys want to ask him questions about this study later. Okay, 225 for reps on the bench press. Again, you want that or you want that? Okay? I think I want that. They went up 3 plus reps. Okay, this guy went down reps. Okay. So it's been proven effective in the real world at Missouri. Okay, they actually used it. They used it. How long have you guys been using it? Since 2005. Okay. Yeah.
I've always got to defend what we did here. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, if your numbers are going down, then that was just improper periodization, which very well may be true. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. The thing that we didn't account for was all the additional fatigue that happened through the training. Now, we did this during the summer. So what else do we have during summer besides lifting? Well, conditioning, 7-on-7, guys going to play basketball, going to the pool. So we couldn't account for that. So we were asking these guys who were coming in overly fatigued from doing all that other stuff to keep pushing it harder. And what happened? They overtrained. They had regression. We allowed them to progress at their own rate. What happened? They got stronger. They got more power.
Yeah.
Well, you're actually, every time that you work out, you're changing the number of repetitions, so you actually take longer to adapt to the stimulus of the exercise. You don't have to change exercises at all. So it is under the same principles, basically, as under periodization.
Okay, this is what the workouts, this is my women's basketball team. This is what a workout looks like. This is what they see on the screens in the weight room. Okay. Like I said, we have no paper workout. So they come in, they see, all right, look at the girl in the yellow here. I'll use her as an example since I had that video of her up there. She goes 95 for 5, 125 for 5, 140, and we're looking at a 10. We're trying to get a 10 RM out of them. Okay. She hit 10 at 140. So we look over here, tell her to look here to get her weight for her next set. You can see that was in the beginning. They all hit, close to their numbers. All right. Actually, no, I was doing a 6 RM here. So she was way over. She was a lot stronger than we thought. Okay. Most of them were in that ballpark. Some of them were way over. Okay. 12s. These are freshmen down here that we were just learning more about them. Next set, okay, she auto-regulates it up to 155, okay? 155, she gets 9. Okay? You can see how it affects some of these girls, okay? She went from 7 to 5, so that tells me on the next set she doesn't need to go up. She's hit her max there. She can't handle anymore. Okay? But that is more motivational. Actually, that was 150 she hit there for 9, and then she went up to 155. So that gives them immediate feedback, okay, this is my goal, I exceeded it. This is my next goal, I exceeded it. Okay, I jumped, now I'm pushing it hard. I'm having a great day, having a good day. And it lets us know she recovered, between workouts. She's making progress. We look at some of the other kids and we can, see. All right, and then she hit 6. Okay. So then that is the weight for her next workout right there, 155. And she's going to try to hit 6 or more the next time. That's how we utilize it. And it's very easy to use, like I said, on these strength exercises. Squats, benches, deadlifts, any kind of dumbbell work, dumbbell incline, dumbbell bench, any of those type of things. It's easy to track and utilize. Okay? And it's easy for them to see if you put it up on the screens like this. And it's easy for them to see and kind of, with this team, some days what we'll do, just to find another way to motivate them a little bit, is if a girl goes down, we'll put her numbers up there in red. And this team doesn't like to play that way. So the other girls will say, no, we're getting that red off of there. You're going to find a way to push yourself today. I'll let them do that for the next set to try to find a way to push her. And if she doesn't have it, I'll tell them, hey, calm down. She hadn't recovered. She can't push it. She doesn't have it in her. Okay. And this is on the fly. When they're in the weight room, either myself or one of our assistants or interns, as soon as they get their number, they bring it over, we put it in there, it's up on the screen. So they're seeing it right away. And they're seeing what their teammates are doing right away. Okay. All those things dealing with neurodynamics, there's combinations, and I mentioned those. It's not this, and this, and you train this way. You combine them with a lot of things. Speed, as in sprinting, is comprised of both the magnitude and rate. So you need to do those activities like the guys training with the bands on. We're working the rate with the leg cycling. We're working the magnitude with the foot contacts, applying force to the ground. Okay. Okay. If progress is not made during a session, then something is amiss. Okay. If they're not making progress, and a lot of times when you first start doing this type of stuff, workout 1 to workout 2, they won't make it. Maybe it's just a little, we're maxing them, we're pushing them. If we're coming off a period where they haven't been pushing it hard. But from workout 2 to workout 3, and from workout 3 to workout 4, that's when we start seeing things, the body catching up, adaptations taking place. If we do it, the frequency is the right, frequency. We start to see this progress taking place. Okay? And then what I found, going between the 10s, the 6s, the 3s, is it's generally about 3 to 4 weeks. We can go 10s for about 3 to 4 weeks, and then we start wearing them out in that rep range. Okay, that's when we'll shift down to 6s. Okay, and I don't know if it's physical as much as maybe it's mental. Some people just get tired of doing the same thing, So we shift it, then we shift it down, and then we'll come back. We'll kind of do an undulating periodization model with it. Okay, where in some exercises in the first week, maybe we're doing a 10 on this exercise and a 6 on that one. Okay, if we really want to push the other one for more strength gains. Too much fatigue and not enough recovery. That's when we see things breaking down. If you're pushing them too hard, you're trying to do too many of these sets to max, okay, too frequently, then you're breaking them down too much. So you got to be careful with it. Okay, the rule of thirds that Buchenholz talks about, that I found is pretty well, pretty true. Okay, it will take you an average of a third the amount of drop off in reps, drop off in how much you can handle, speed. Take you about a third. So if we're going at a 6% drop off, if we're looking at work until you have a 6% drop off, okay, takes you about 2 days to get back up to your base level, and about 2 more days to supercompensate, to get to where you've made that adaptation, and now you're a little bit stronger. Okay? So then 4 days later, on a lot of these things, you can push them. Well, a lot of times we go 5 to 6 days, okay? Because of just what Coach Mann said. There's other things going on. There's other things going on outside of the weight room. They're playing pickup. They're running. They're doing other things. So this is just looking at that fatigue that you just instilled or just utilized in the weight room. Now you got to consider what's going on outside of the weight room, because that's all coming into this fatigue equation. Okay, and if you don't take care of it properly, this is what you see. Staleness and overtraining. Moodiness, fatigue, depression, all those things. Okay? Those are things, if you're, in tune with your athletes, which you should be, okay? They're not just, robots coming in and out of the weight room. You got to form that relationship, and you got to be in tune with them, and you got to get to where you can talk to them and understand, you can trust them, they can trust you, and they're going to be honest with you. Hey, I don't have it in me today. I'm really feeling just weak and tired in this muscle group. From the last workout, I didn't recover. Okay, those type of things you gotta understand so that you can adjust, and that's where augmented regulatory training can help you, because you can adjust it on the fly, athlete to athlete. Okay, you can adjust it up or down, based on their performance, based on, if you trust them well enough, based on really what they tell you. Okay, I like to test them a little bit first before I, put too much in that. But there's certain kids that that you can trust everything they say, and you can just go off of that. Okay. So, if you're interested in, I didn't put this presentation on that CD. If you're interested in getting it, just email me. There's my email address. You can do it. I'll probably end up putting this up on our website, so just do a Google search for JMU Strength. It's the first thing that pops up, or you can do that lengthy orgs.jmu.edu to get to the site.
I've done a lot of
Yeah.
In my mind, and we talked about this as a coach, I think it gives you quote unquote permission to say, okay, we have a great day, or as you say, and I love the way you put it, to manage the fatigue. And with the focus that we've got on health and safety right now, I think this style of training gives us, as older coaches and as young coaches, not only gives you permission to let them have a bad day, but it helps us hone our skills in managing that fatigue and selling it to the athlete of, okay, here's why this happened. Let's take better care of ourselves because the next time we come back, we got to be.
Yeah.
I think that gives us that permission. It brings up the idea of giving everybody permission to have that day, whether it's a great day or a poor day.
It does, and it allows you to get a little deeper relationship with that kid to now say, you know, these other 6 people made progress, you didn't. Come here and talk to me. What's going on? You know, are you overtraining? You know, are you feeling these symptoms that I had up there? Sleeping okay? You know, fatigue? What's going on outside of training? You can go a little deeper with them. How's your diet? You know, you can go into the training room and talk to the trainer now. Hey, John's tanking it, man. What's going on? Did he come in? Is he sick? You know, it allows you to open up that avenue to get a little deeper with the athlete and not just hammer them, well, you're not as good as the other guy. You're not as good as the other girl. Everybody's making progress but you. No, why are you not making progress? Why are you not keeping up with the rest? Okay. And again, you gotta play that one, you know. You don't want to be, you know, hey, put a star on your workout, you know, if you're feeling good, a happy face, and, you know, we'll go with that. If not, put a frown and you can go home. No, you got to push them a little bit to say, that we're going to work you up to that first max set. Because at 50, 75%, at 50%, you should be having no problem doing that. When we get to that first max set, show me how you feel. Show me if you've recovered. Show me how you can perform. If they don't hit it, they, you know, like on Coach Mann's, you know, chart there, 0 to 2 on a 6 RM day, if you're in the 0 to 2 range, something's wrong, okay? Something's wrong with your recovery. The fatigue was too great, and like he was saying, it could be not the weight room fatigue. It could be the 7-on-7, the playing basketball, the staying up, you know, doing something else. But if that's a trend that kid is involved in, you got to identify it right there because you want them all to make progress. So you can cut it off right there and say, hey, come here and talk to me. You know, why are you not, you know, making this progress like everybody else? Yep. Yeah. He asked if we looked into applying this to conditioning. Yeah, you can definitely apply it to conditioning because you can stopwatch conditioning. You can time, anything you can time, measure, you can apply it to that, okay? And what we'll do with conditioning, some things I've done. So I've set out the electronic timers, and we'll get a baseline test on a 20-yard sprint. And we might combine that with what we're doing in the weight room. We do a couple sets in the weight room, we go right out and run a sprint. And we get their best time. Okay, and we say, okay, every rep has to be within a certain percentage of that. If we're looking at 6% drop-off, it has to be within 6% of that number, okay? And we're going to keep running them until you drop below that 6%. We're going to push that component as hard as we can until we have 6% of fatigue. Then we stop. Okay? And what I'll do with that to motivate them sometimes, the kids I've worked with in that capacity, let's say you run a 5 flat on something, you know, and we want you to run, you know, up to, you know, a 5 point whatever every rep, and we're going to do so many reps. Well, generally, you'll see a fast time, and then you'll see a faster time somewhere near because they start competing with each other. So we say, okay, for you to get out of the drill, for you to get out of running the reps, you got to run one more like that. They got to dig a little deeper to find that one. Okay, but yeah, you can apply it to any of that. You can apply it to plyos, running, any of that. Yep.
How do you utilize the order regulation
In season, you still use it. You just drop the intensity. You just go maybe one set. Okay. Let's max out this third set today for 6. If you get 6, that's great. If you get, 8, next week we're jumping it up. You don't push them for that third, fourth set. You don't dig as deep. Yeah, because you got to account for that other fatigue. But you can still use it to say, warm up, hit a max, 10 rep max, 6 rep max, 3 rep max, wherever you're at, okay? See where you're at today. Next time we come in and do that same exercise, if you exceeded the 6 on their chart, you got to 8, we bump you up the next week. Okay? So you just drop the volume. Drop the volume, keep the intensity up there and drop the volume. Yes, sir. If you're going to track speed, like I said, we've got some electronic timers. That's real easy. Or you just have to have somebody out there with a watch keeping track of it, on a clipboard. But it's real easy for me with electronic timer, and I'm just talking about a Spark electronic timer, not some real high dollar one, to boom, see a kid run, clear it, call out his number. Somebody can write it on the board. Boom. Okay. This is just a PowerPoint spreadsheet or a PowerPoint slide. We put the workouts right on that, and during the set or during the workout, they hit that one. That tells us how we auto-regulate it, up or down. We put their number up there. Boom, they know their next number. They go to try to hit it. We put their next number up there, and then, just like I said, it's either me. Everything's wireless. We've got a wireless mouse we walk around with. Boom, boom, boom. We got a wireless keyboard. We're right there tapping the numbers in. Okay? And it's giving them and their teammates that feedback to see how they're doing right there. And what's the next set? What's the next set? Okay. Any other questions? Yep. I've had one kid, I had a kid just a couple weeks ago say that. This Russian kid said that was just, he said the first max set, it was just too heavy. But that first max set, by the time he got to the second max set, he did better because that was that first max set. But then that fooled us because we didn't auto-regulate correctly, so then the third one was even heavier. So, people like that, we'll give them another set. Just give them another set to warm up. Okay? And that's another individual thing. Some kids warm up a little slower than others. Some kids can jump right in there and just do a quick warm up and go at it. Some take, if that was me, there'd be like 10 warm up sets up there. As you get older, it takes a lot longer. Good. Yep. Yeah. Time is the factor for us. Yeah. 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 And when you get into those sets, you start dealing in max sets, you got to tell them you got to rest more. They're generally from here to here, and we're supersetting these lat pull downs with this. And a lot of times we'll max the pull downs too. We'll do a push pull max, and we'll have their numbers up here for the pull downs or the rows or whatever we're doing, whatever opposing back exercise we do. But they'll go boom, boom to that one, and then I'll say, okay, now start slowing down. Take longer rest. Wait until your battery's fully charged. Wait until you feel like you can get up there and give us a good max. They'll get that first max, and then if they rush to that second one, like you're saying, big drop-off.
I like the idea, especially for upper body stuff. It's funny to see you use it on squat, the same thing, and that's a difficult thing for a lot of those kids, especially.
Yeah.
You got football guys, and those guys will go on 450 for an insane amount of reps.
Yeah. You got to set your racks up because they're going to fail. Squat, they'll fail and drop. You got to make sure you got those safety bars set up so that, boom, they'll have something to catch them. But, yeah, no, you really got to encourage them. And then, again, that goes into time. Now, could we do a 4-set? We don't have time to do a 4-set. We'll usually start week 1, week 2, week 3. We'll start adding volume that way. And then that's about all we can handle, and they got to move on. They got to go because these are basketball players. They're going to play. They're going to work with their coaches or whatever. We don't have much more time. Okay. So you can do this format basically every day you're in the weight room. You're testing every day. This, for a basketball team whose coaches don't care what their 1-rep max is, takes that off my plate. I don't have to test them. I can hey, come here. Look at this, coach. This kid's making progress. His 10-rep max is going up. His 6-rep max is going up. 3-rep max is going up. It looks good to me. I don't have to take a day to do a 1-rep max and all this other stuff. I'm getting it on the fly. And I'm getting feedback on, are they recovering? Are they making progress? Are they adapting? Okay. The kids that aren't adapting, drink 2 protein drinks. Go to bed early. Take care of this. Do these things. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. Hey, man. How you doing? Yeah, doing good. I know.